Yo, what is up? Welcome to Safe Action and the Wise Defender podcast. Super jazzed to be here with you guys. As you can tell, we are not in the studio today. I'm actually in Park City, Utah, hence the moose behind me. Hopefully it's not too distracting. I'm just traveling on vacation, actually doing a few fun projects while we're here, collaborating a little bit with New West Knife Works here in Park City. They have some locations around as well, but we did some filming with them yesterday, and then tomorrow we're actually going to be with the Park City Gun Club, which is going to be cool. So we're going to do a Pew Pew Destinations video with them. So a lot of fun. But originally just came here to be on vacation, and normally how we do Pew Pew Destination videos is if we come across a place that we're like, dude, this place is cool, the employees are cool, good customer service, then we'll reach out and see if they'd be willing to do a video with us. But that's just kind of it's a very casual process, but we make videos with people that we want to make videos with. That's just kind of how it goes. Today's topic, though, that was really all the housekeeping we had. Today's topic is, do range rules suck, and do they prevent you from improving as a shooter? Kind of dramatic, but that's basically what we're talking about. Man, it's a complicated topic because there's some degree where I understand the range rules and why they do things how they do things, and then there's other sides of it where it's like, man, dude, that just makes things really hard for someone who's looking to improve their skills. One thing I do want to address right at the get-go is what I'm not necessarily poking at here are the universal firearm safety rules, and I do the air quotes because they're really not that universal. For people who are kind of new to the firearm space, I'm just going to quickly go over this. So the NRA has 3 rules. Jeff Cooper came up with 4, and they've kind of gotten massaged over time. People kind of add their own things, take away some things, and that alone is evidence that the firearm safety rules, although we like to act like they're universal, there's some controversy there. But in general, you have treating every gun as if it's loaded. Again, language may vary depending on who you're talking to. Keeping your finger off the trigger, usually that includes out of the trigger guard. And some people add language like until your sights are on target and you've made the decision to shoot, and yada yada, nuance, right? And then there's keeping your muzzle pointed in a safe direction. The concept is at any given moment, whether negligence or malfunction on the part of the firearm, if the gun were to go off, I want the bullet to be going in a direction of least consequence, as active self-protection would put it. So bullets, we got to make sure that they're going in safe directions. Now, the 4th rule, knowing your target and what's behind it, similar concept, but this kind of has more to do with positive identification of your target, and then bullets go through stuff, right? So knowing what's behind the thing that you're shooting at, whether it's self-defense or target shooting. But those are kind of the rules roughly. NRA, they have a rule that's, always keep your gun unloaded unless it's in use. Now, that's a tricky one because you're like, oh, well, this is my self-defense gun. It's always loaded. It's always loaded by my bedstand or in my holster. And it's like, oh, well, that's okay because it's in use. The thing is, if I stuck that self-defense gun in a safe with my other guns, let's say I don't know, if you're the kind of person who wants a gun in every room and you have that loaded firearm for defense in your safe next to your recreational guns, shouldn't you treat those the same anyways? So some of these rules kind of get debated over. I've heard a firearms instructor say, if you're not directly involved in me trying to stop the act of shooting, you may have a muzzle briefly point at you as my gun is moving from point A to point B. And it's like, whoa, okay. Wait, is that a problem? And so there's some kind of nuanced debate that can happen there. And hey, I recommend you guys get after it in the comments. But what are some of the firearm safety rules that where it's like, okay, there's an exception there. Okay, well, is the exception the standard that we want to achieve once you get to a certain level of proficiency? Or, when is the exception an exception, right? So there's a whole conversation based around the firearm safety rules that are not actually so universal. But then what shooting ranges tend to do is they try to amplify these rules to kind of cater to, how do I put this politely, the least trained individual. That's just what it is, right? And so you may go to a shooting range, whether it's indoor or outdoor, and you might think, man, this place has a lot of strict rules. And yeah, they might, right? But again, because you can't hire a range safety officer, RSO, to stand over the shoulder of everybody who's shooting that day, right? You just can't do it. So they have to create rules that cater to the person on the range with the least amount of experience. Here's the problem, what I've found with that, though. During my brief time as an RSO, I would be the guy who was like, okay, watch the safety video and sit them down and give them their bowl of popcorn. Not really. That'd be fun, though. And, they'd watch the safety video. Sorry, ice machine. They'd watch the safety video and, it seemed like they were engaging with it, understanding everything that's being said. They'd come over, I'd give them the waiver, they'd read through all the safety rules. I agree to follow these rules. They'd kind of roll their eyes like, oh, so many rules. Why do you need all these rules? And then they'd go onto the range and just continue to completely violate all of the rules that they just watched and read and signed that they wouldn't violate. And it's completely negligent. It's accidental. They didn't mean to do it, but it's a lack of self-awareness, both awareness of their body and of the gun, that just leads them to make these mistakes. So it almost doesn't matter that there's a ton of rules, because they were going to violate them negligently anyways. Now the flip side to that is, well, you have all these rules, so if they negligently break one, hopefully there's another rule that's kind of catching them from doing something catastrophic, right? That's kind of the idea. But in general, when we're thinking about shooting range rules, the range rules are kind of extra rules that are there to try to keep inexperienced shooters from breaking the core firearm safety rules, right? So if you think of something like keep your muzzle pointed at the backstop at all times, part of that is a property thing, right? Like, we don't want holes in the floor or the walls because that costs money to repair. But also, if the gun is required to always be pointed at the berm, and if you're being cognizant of that, then that means you're not going to accidentally point the gun at someone else next to you because the gun's pointed at the berm. So there's some rules like that that kind of exist to really magnify some of the firearm safety rules. So instead of just saying, like, don't point your gun at anybody and just leaving it at that, you're just kind of amplifying the rules a bit. Okay, moving on. What are some of the strict rules that ranges have? And we're going to, this is going somewhere. We're going to talk about both my ideas of how this can improve going forward for ranges, but also what you can do about it as a shooter who wants to get better. But let's talk about what some of the strict rules are and why they're a problem. Number one is the 1 shot per second rule. Oh, man, out of all of them, I think this one is my least favorite, seriously. So some ranges will have a rule, you can only fire 1 round per second, or maybe they'll articulate it as no rapid fire, but it's very arbitrary. Like, what is rapid fire? And even the 1 shot per second thing, it's like, are you really out there with the stopwatch? Whatever. But the idea of why I have a problem with this. Some of you might be like, what's the problem? I mean, like, yeah, you're just group shooting, right? Like, just trying to get as tight of a group as possible. And this is where it's just kind of understanding, what am I trying to achieve? If you're going to the range and your only goal is just to really push your precision and consistency with accuracy, that's fine. You can go do that. But if your goal is to build speed, proficiency, and you really want to up your skills as, especially someone who's a defender, you conceal carry for personal protection, I want to be good at speed, right? I want to be able to draw fast, shoot fast, move fast, transition targets fast, get follow-up shots fast. So if you're limited to 1 round per second, that means I can't do a doubles drill, right? Which is where you basically fire the gun twice, boom, boom, kind of like double clicking a mouse, right? You can do controlled pairs, and that's just kind of getting a little bit more confirmation in between shots. But in general, a doubles drill happens pretty quickly. You're definitely firing faster than 1 second, 2 rounds in under a second for sure. The goal of that drill is to work on recoil management. Am I controlling the gun sufficiently? And then you could do a build drill, which is 6 rounds rapidly. And the goal with that is to say, do I have an endurance in my grip? Or is my grip falling apart as I continue to pull the trigger over and over and over again as I attempt to manage recoil? You can't do that with the rule of 1 shot per second. And that's a problem, at least for how I want to train and how I'm convinced you have to get better. So, that's why I got a personal beef with that one. And then you have other rules like your target must be all the way back against the backstop. I'm a member at a range where that's a rule you have to. I do this because there's no fancy buttons you push to have the target travel that distance. You have to use a hand crank and a pulley system. It's fun. Old school. But you have to put the target all the way to the back. And, I have beef with that because I want to practice at a variety of distances, right? I want to practice at close targets. I want to practice at far targets. And you would shoot differently on a target that's further away than you would at a target that's closer up, right? You just would. The level of confirmation of your sights that you need is different. And yeah, there's several reasons why, like if you're just group shooting, like you should expect your groups to maybe open up a little bit. But in general, it's going to slow you down if your goal is to test your speed, which again doesn't really matter if they have a 1 round per second rule anyways. Something else is a lot of ranges will have a no holster draw rule, which is a problem if you want to get good at holster draws. Now, of course, you can dry fire your holster draws. I recommend you do. You should be doing that. But at some point, I do want to take it to the range, put all the fundamentals together, and do it live. And you should. You absolutely should. But a lot of ranges won't allow that. So it's like, okay, well, I guess we're planning a trip to go out into the woods or something. But something else is, I kind of already alluded to this, but having your muzzle pointed at the backstop the whole time. Now, okay, this is the one that I have the least amount of beef with, but in general, I want to be able to practice holding my gun in a variety of positions. And you can debate in the comments on, low ready, high port, low port, SUL, all that kind of stuff. I'm not advocating for temple index at all, but in general, I want the option to move my muzzle around so I can practice different methods of sight presentation and all that jazz. So being required to point the muzzle only at the backstop, I think it's prohibitive. So what would I recommend for ranges that have a lot of strict rules? I think this makes a lot of sense. It'd be a little bit of work, but I think it makes sense, and I think it'd be super rad if we could standardize this across multiple ranges that recognize the same levels. But basically, I think we should have a tiered system, right? Level 1 is your average shooting range customer, right? They come in and they have to follow all the rules to the letter, right? But if you take a test, pass a certain qualification, you'd have to set up an appointment to do this. But you pass a qualification, you show a certain level of both firearm manipulation proficiency as well as shooting ability, then you get level 2 status. And it's a different colored badge that you bring into the range, but that unlocks basically your ability to do something like rapid fire, where it's like you walk up to your lane, you put your badge on your little clip or however your range does it, and the RSO looks and sees they have a level 2 badge hanging there. And so now when you go pop 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 pop, they're like, oh, it's okay, they're level 2. we've already vetted them. Or again, if this got standardized, that would be cool. But like, they've been vetted by someone. Creating a standard around this would be quite difficult, I recognize. But even if you're just a range that you're like, hey, we could do something like this, go for it, please. Actually, if any of you are aware of ranges already doing something like this, please leave it in the comments. Let me know. I want to know about it. I'd love to even have them on the podcast and pick their brain on all of this. But let's say then level 3 would be something like, you have permission to draw from the holster. We trust you. We have good reason to believe that your firearms handling is up to snuff. So, okay, great. Love that. And then, maybe for ranges that had like a second private range where you can shoot in multiple directions, a higher level would allow you access to that range unsupervised, or maybe limited supervision, where you can move around more. But I think that would be a clean way to allow people who are serious about wanting to train and get better to be able to do those things on the range, because those are not the people that you're necessarily worried about. The people that you're worried about are the people who don't know. They don't know how to be safe with the gun. It hasn't reached a subconscious level for them yet. They're not subconsciously proficient in firearm safety and manipulation. Those are the people that you really want to have adhering to all of the strict rules. But the person who's a competition shooter, or a dedicated self-defender who's put in all the reps and all the work, like, that's not necessarily the person that you're worried about. So I think a tiered system could be a nice way to allow different shooters at different levels to have different access or capabilities on the range. It's a dream, right? But it's not a reality right now. Unless you know of a range that's doing this, please let me know. So, what can you do right now, though, with all these strict rules? Well, number one, you could go find a different range that doesn't have a bunch of strict rules. Not saying that's necessarily the solution, though. Let's say you're like, dude, there's no other ranges around me. I'm kind of stuck at the range that I'm at. But how can I really push myself and my skills, with these rules? So with the 1 shot per second rule, if that's a rule at your range, you can still do presentation drills. So basically, you're there, your muzzle's pointed at the backstop, and you just bring the gun up to your eye and then pull the trigger. And then you can reset, gun up to your eye, pull the trigger. Gun up to your eye, pull the trigger, and just keep doing that. You can definitely do that in a second and just keep up the reps, right? And you can even work on your speed too. So, okay, count 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. Okay, they won't yell at me. And then just really work on that speed of locking your eyes on where you want to shoot, optic up to your eye, and trigger press. So you can work some speed into it and still stay under or not without violating the 1 shot per second rule. Other drills that you could do is just single shot recoil management drills. Very simple. Basically, the concept is you take a shot, and as you're shooting, you're just being aware of what your sights are doing, or your dot. As you shoot, is the gun recoiling and then kind of chilling in the sky, and you have to force it back down? When you shoot, is the gun dipping down and you have to recover it back up? Or when you shoot, is it returning, are your sights returning to your target, whether it's a bullseye or an A zone, whatever you're shooting at? Is it returning each time? And so you can do that by just firing a single shot. It won't really test the durability of your grip, but you can learn quite a bit about your recoil control. And even if you can fire a bunch of rounds very quickly and do rapid fire, I would still recommend doing a drill like that. You could potentially do transition drills. So if you had to do 1 shot per second, then just make the targets that you're shooting at smaller. So when they're a little bit further away or a little bit smaller, it just takes you a hair longer to get that confirmation of your dot or your sights on target. So bang, 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 bang. That might have been a little bit fast, but in general you get the idea, right? Bang, 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 bang. You can still work on moving your gun in recoil to get it from one target to the next. And then at that point, you're just really focusing on precision. Again, I'm not necessarily saying this is how I think you should shoot. This is just us working with the limitations of some of these range rules. Your target being at the back or all the way up against the berm, you might just be a little out of luck with that one. I mean, you could say that any fundamentals that you would practice at closer distances, like 7 yards, 5 yards, you can still practice those same fundamentals with a target that's at 15 yards. You may slow down a little bit if your goal is consistency and precision, but if you're pushing your speed, and let's say you don't have the 1 shot per second rule, because all of these ranges are different. That's the thing, man. Like, you go to a range and you're just like, what are the special nuances of this range? It's like, oh, well, this one, I can load mags, but I can't load mags at the bench during a ceasefire because the gun is also at that bench, so I have to step back and load my mags somewhere else, versus it's like, oh, we don't care if you're at the bench, just don't touch the gun. All these ranges are a little bit different. So, but let's say you need to have your target at the back, by the berm. Let's say you're allowed to fire a little bit quickly. You can still do a doubles drill, and shooting at that distance, you're going to see where things fall apart, and that's good, right? So it's not a huge disadvantage. Like, yes, I would love to have the variety, but you can still do a lot even if your target has to be a little further away. No holster draws, that rule, man, that one you are just kind of out of luck. You're just going to have to either find another range to go to occasionally, or schedule time with the buddies to go out to the woods or something to practice your live fire holster draws. Muzzle being pointed at the backstop. One weird idea, again, it's not perfect, but we're just working with what we got here, is you can keep your muzzle pointed at the backstop and then turn your body so that you see the target with your eyes. You position, extend gun, and fire. So basically you're just kind of, stepping into your stance. Again, I don't love it, but it is a way for you to play with different body motions of, kind of moving into your proper stance, extending and taking that shot. Again, we're just working with what we got here. There's a range that I went to recently, the Vancouver Rifle and Pistol Club in Vancouver, Washington, and it was great. Very small range. Man, that range had been there before the neighborhood around it. So it's like development happened, there's like a Fred Meyer next to it. And it's kind of funny for like a small shooting range, but it's a member only range. And I got invited by one of the members to come check it out. And it was great. You could pretty much do whatever you wanted. The only rules was whoever gets there first establishes the shooting line. So let's say someone wanted to work on close-up shooting and they wheeled the shooting bench with wheels on it, they wheeled it to the 7-yard line. Guess what? We're all shooting at the 7-yard line. If the first person there was like, I want to do, 25 yards, and it's like, okay, we're all doing 25 yards, or at least until the range clears out, and it's like, oh, I'm the only one? Sweet. Now you can move it up and kind of change where the line is. But that was pretty much it. And, I'm like, what can we do here? Can I do rapid fire? Can I do this? He's like, hey, the only rule is hit the target. It's like, oh. So I did holster draw stuff. I did target transitions. I did doubles with target transitions. It was great. And I think we need more ranges that kind of have that philosophy. They're still working the cameras and watching what people are doing. There's not really an RSO who's on the range with you, but there's a certain level of trust where you're kind of being governed by the community. Now that has its ups and its downs, right? But in general, it's like, hey, someone want to do a ceasefire, they'd kind of go up to you and be like, hey, is it cool if we do a ceasefire in a couple minutes? Finish up what you're doing. You're like, oh yeah, no problem. And, you can kind of finish your mag or whatever. It was just very community driven versus like someone just be like, ceasefire. And like, oh man, I was just about to. I like that. I like that. I think there's something kind of cool about that. Of course, you do need to make sure that the people who have access to that range can be trusted, because people violate the safety rules. At some point, the people who own the range are going to be like, dude, it's not worth it. And the rules will get stricter. So it really is up to you to make sure that your firearms proficiency meets a level of subconscious competency. That means basically you don't even have to think about it. You pick up a gun and your finger's off the trigger. Like you pick up a drill, your finger is straight. You know, you pick up a Nerf gun and you're like, why is my finger off the trigger? It's a Nerf gun. It's like, muscle memory. That's the level that you should be at. Your muzzle awareness needs to be so on point that someone walks, out of the corner of your eye, you see someone walking and the gun on the table, you just naturally want to turn it in a safe direction. It's just kind of automatic. When you get to that level, working on your speed on a shooting range not only becomes a lot easier, but it also becomes easier to find and access ranges where the rules don't need to be super strict, because they're depending on you to be strict on yourself when it comes to firearm safety. So yeah, I don't know. I hope this conversation was kind of fun. I know it's kind of nerdy, right? I mean, who hops on the internet and wants to talk about range rules? But I think it's important, because if you want to get better as a shooter, I don't want the shooting range itself to be standing in my way. I want to have access to a space where I can put bullets into a berm and then do the things that I need to do to practice and become more proficient. But it's certainly got to start with proper firearms handling and a good understanding of gun safety. If you don't have that, then it's, you're just not going to be able to take advantage of a range like that. So I hope this was fun and helpful. Thanks y'all for listening, and see you guys on the range.